and just thank you all for coming this morning. I'm Larimer County Commissioner Joy Shai McNally, Chair of the Legislative Committee, and I'll call this meeting to order. And I want to just thank you all for being here. Happy holidays. And I'll have Courtney do roll call, please.
Yeah, I'll just go down the list and you can see if you're here. Samantha Albert.
Here.
Christy Belton.
Here.
Christina Bury. Commissioner Hillary Cooper.
Here.
Okay, great. Pat Dorsey.
Yes.
Director Matt McCombs. Commissioner Jody Shattuck McNally. Which here. Mark Morgan.
Here.
Julie Stencil. I see you, Julie. Yeah. Commissioner Ben Tisdale. And Sylvan White Skunk.
Do we have enough for quorum? I think we just barely do, right?
We do have enough for quorum.
Awesome. Thank you very much, everyone. So I don't know if anyone had, excuse me, a chance to read the minutes. Does anyone have any concerns or additions or corrections? And how's my volume and my voice, by the way? Cool. Thank you.
Fine.
Can I have a motion to approve the minutes as written?
I so move.
I'll second.
Thank you so much, Mr. Morgan and Christy. Is there any further discussion? There's a motion and a second. Great, there's a motion on the table. All those in favor, can you please say aye or aye?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Great, minutes are approved. I really appreciate that.
You muted yourself.
Thank you, Courtney. I feel like I've had 2 weeks and 1 week this week, so I apologize. Courtney, could you put up the agenda just real quick so we can kind of remind everyone in case folks like me trying to manage 3 screens?
Yes, just give me a second.
We'll move on to item 2.
Let me know when you guys can see it.
Not yet.
Okay.
There we go. Great. Okay. Well, great. I wasn't sure if we had another thing before the discussion, but I'm going to appreciate. Oh, and Director McCombs has joined us. Thank you, Director McCombs, for being here today. Happy holidays. Glad to have you here. So let's add him to the roll call. So we definitely have quorum now. So I'm going to turn this over to Courtney and to Alice to kind of discussion of our legislative landscape and kind of the current status of our prior legislation and any other items that we need to kind of take into consideration. And then we're going to discuss about follow the flow for after that. So thank you, Courtney and Alice. And Alice, thanks for being here.
Yeah, and I'll let Alice take the lead on this.
Sure. Yeah, so happy to be here with you guys. So, it is crazy. We are less than a month away from the beginning of session, which will start on January 9th, which is a little early this year. It starts on a Monday because the General Assembly has to meet first to prep for the inauguration of the governor on the 10th. So this past November, there was the big election, and there was some pretty big political winds shifting in the favor of Democrats. There is now a super majority in the House, and that means that 2/3 of the chamber are Democrats and can pass a bill with 0 bipartisanship if they need to. Where the House picked up 5 seats, the Dems picked up 5 seats, and then in the Senate, it's almost a super majority, or they picked up 4 seats on that front. So, this is going to be very interesting. We have a lot of new legislators. I think there's almost 50 folks who have never served in the General Assembly. So there's a lot of educating to be done. They just announced committee hearings over the past week, which is very exciting, and I can send those around to folks, and you're gonna see a lot of new names and faces. So this is, going to be a very interesting year. So in top lines, on the Senate side, Senator-elect Dylan Roberts, formerly of the House, is going to be chair of the Agriculture Committee, which is pretty fantastic. He is, seasoned legislator, really thoughtful, really gets a lot of these issues, and is a very hands-on legislator. So that, I think, is just a huge win for us in our field on that front. And then Rep McCormick will continue to chair on the House side, which is also great. She has really been committed to learning our issues and getting smart on that. And so we're in a very good space. And similarly, Julie McCluskey was elected to be the next Speaker of the House. I don't envy her. She's got a 46-member caucus to manage and negotiate and try to coordinate, which is borderline impossible. But if there's anyone who can do it, I think, Julie is one of them. She is just so fantastic. But so she also, has been a huge advocate for the work that in, forestry and mitigation, forest health, the work that this council does. So that's pretty fantastic. And then in the Senate, we saw, President Fenberg and Majority Leader Moreno. And then lastly, so a big impact is that 5 out of the 6 members of the Joint Budget Committee are new to the committee. They're not new legislators, but they are new to the process. And so that is, that similarly, a lot of education that needs to happen. Over the past couple of weeks, they've started the staff briefings, as well as the actual hearings for the sort of preparation on that front to get legislators smart. It's very clear that they are drinking from the fire hose and oftentimes reading materials for the first time up on the dais. So this is the bulk of the lobbying and building support for budget DIs and things like decision items and things like that is going to happen in March, just because they are still getting their feet out from under them. So that's just sort of an update kind of on the Capitol right now. And then I'm happy, Courtney, to turn it over to you if we want to talk through some of the how y'all want to engage on legislation this year, and I can jump in.
Yeah.
Could I interrupt you just for a moment? Just wanted to know if there's been any changes or amendments to the wildfire interim committee bill that we were, 3 of our priorities were rolled in. Did they change and add the internship piece into that bill for us? Has that had any changes since we had our meeting at the Forest House?
So we have sent out I've worked with Angela and Carolyn over at the Forest Service to notify legislators just about hey, here's some thoughts, here's who we are, things like that. I need to ping Rep Lynch, who is now the minority leader in the House, on that component, but I have not seen amendment language yet. But that's something that we can get. There's still time.
Great, and I believe he's part of my county, so, and I talked to him at the funeral for Rep McKean, so I have some relationships there. So
well, that's great. That's
cool.
Good to know. So I might let me dig back and pull out some receipts and just see when the last point of engagement was. I talked to him briefly at a holiday party on Tuesday, but maybe just be a little bit more concrete. But yeah, we can.
Great, thank you very much. And I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead and move on to the next piece. I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right, Courtney.
Yes. I was just going to say one other thing. I think we've heard from Senator Cutter many times that she's happy with the proposed amendments. And I think we were still going to touch in with Senator Jacques Lewis about making those amendments also, because aren't the two of them are co-sponsoring that bill?
Yeah, so that we just need to aim it at the committee of the sponsor and the committee of origin. So
Okay.
for that bill, I think it's tough because they're swapping. So Lisa Cutter was elected to the Senate, and then Tammy Story was elected to the House. And so I have reached out to the legal LCS staff on the Hill to try to figure out how they're gonna manage that, like who's now the prime sponsor. And I have not gotten any feedback as they were trying to parse through it themselves, as this isn't
Okay.
yeah, we'll figure that out.
I also had a conversation with Senator Jacques Lewis when she came up to visit family in Fort Collins, and I got to have a conversation with her, and I told her I was really excited about that, and to just reach out to me if she had, questions. And I had talked to Rick Cutter's or State Senator-elect Cutter. So that's going to be hard to
I know.
switch my brain for a while. So I just want to let you know that they all seem pretty excited. And I heard from one of the new state senator-elects from my county too, that she had heard something about this bill and that they had thought it was a really good bill. So it sounds like the buzz is very positive. Just wanted to share that.
That's great.
Yeah. So I think the next thing we wanted to talk about, is how the members of the council can engage with legislators or give testimony or testify in support of bills. And, I talked to Alice and Angela yesterday, and they said it's important for the council to have one person to sort of represent the views. And so that's something that we thought would be appropriate for this group to decide on a representative that can testify on all the bills that the council has decided to support, or not, maybe not all of them. Alice, what do you think about, is it important that every bill gets a comment from the Forest Health Council?
No, I don't think it's necessary. And I don't think we need to just have one voice for the Forest Health Council. Like, obviously schedules can be really challenging, and the calendar on the Capitol changes very quickly. So but I think it's just important not to have multiple members of the committee testifying on the same bill. Like, that just kind of that can eat up time, and legislators sometimes get cranky, where it's like, I get it, the bill's great, like, let's move on, or things like that. So that's just something that I think, and is worth noting, because I find that to be pretty successful. It is helpful if you can send the same folks, to build a little continuity and face recognition with legislators on that front, but that's not necessarily. I think just, the way the committee or the testimony structure should be, less than 3 minutes, an introduction of who you are, what the council is, what the council's role, and then getting into X, Y, or Z. And that should follow whether it's, a technical, if you're doing technical testimony, or if you're opposing, or if you're supporting bill, just so that we can really start to build up the advisory reputation of the Forest Health Council, because that's something that's new, and you guys now have something to point in statute that it's your job to be there and to talk to these legislators and make sure that they're, keeping up with these issues. So, and I think, session moves very fast. The first couple weeks, it's just the huge influx of bills going through and parsing through. But, one of the things I wasn't sure, and Courtney and I were discussing, is I know that to support legislation, you guys need the whole committee to vote, right? Is that to support the bill?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's going to be what will end up with, means that most of the time we'll be testifying, depending on the timing of the meetings, is that the Forest Health Council will be offering voices of support in the second chamber. Just logistically with the way that works. And so, that's something that I will still be working with, actually not me. But I wanted to announce that we have hired Daphne Gervais from CCI to be the next legislative director for the Department of Natural Resources, who I know is very familiar to a lot of you on the committee. And I am so excited and so grateful. She's such a tremendous person. She's so good at what she does, and I'm just really thrilled for her to step into this, and especially, with given her background with land use, her connections with a lot of you commissioners and folks in that space. I think she's just going to really hit the ground running and be super, super successful this year. So,
I echo that. I'm sad for CCI, but really thrilled for you all because she is phenomenal. And so she's really good at what she does. So
Yeah.
I was excited to hear that news.
yeah, no,
Well, do we think that would be great to have a, like it doesn't then have some like a backup one, backup two, just in case, schedules.
yeah, I think so. And, the benefit now is that in a post-COVID world, the Legislative Assembly or the General Assembly has agreed to keep remote testimony and offer it continually. So that will give flexibility on that front. And so we can pull together just a memo on how to sign up for testimony. I would encourage, we'll see, I know you guys meet every 2 weeks, whether or not we can have Daphne try to join, for these meetings so she can kind of keep aware, but always keeping her in the loop if you are planning to testify, like if a legislator reaches out to you for a comment, things like that. Daphne is at her most effective when she's has all the information at hand, and knows what communications are going in and out. So that I think is going to be really, really critical. I don't want to commit her to saying yes, that she'll be here every 2 weeks on these meetings, especially during session when things are just kind of bonkers, but just keeping that line of communication open. And I know that she'll be talking with Courtney and Alice and Angela and Allison and all those folks on that front, but just plugging that she's going to be your best friend and your biggest ally in this space.
Yeah, I've worked with her on a couple, some bills this last session that we got passed, and she was phenomenal. And sometimes you have to like communicate, like, hey, there's a question about this, and it just moves very fast. So,
Yeah.
well, so let's just in kind of honor everyone's time. I would love to be as the chair, kind of the designated spokesperson, and then have a couple other folks see if they want to step up. So unless there's if we can vote on the whole of this, but maybe if you want to vote on each position, I think it'd be great to have some backup. I'm pretty flexible with my job. I have gone down a lot to testify and stayed late. I've been up till 11 o'clock testifying on a bill remotely. So, and I'm willing to do that. I can always step out of meetings too. I've done that. We've done that too lately because it is really important. So I do feel like this bill might go early and be successful early. So this won't be I'm hoping not in the last month where everything is a little chaotic, which is always just how it is. So I'm assuming this would be kind of something that would be a little bit more easy to predict time-wise, maybe.
Yeah.
So
all interim bills are introduced in the first 3 to 5 days of session. So you're right that it will be one of the first bills to get a hearing. However, with a fiscal note attached to it, it has to wait until after the long bill goes through, because there's no placeholder in the JBC's budget. Like they're not holding, it wasn't in the governor's budget. There's not like a little protective bubble around the funding for that bill that gets already accounted for when the JBC starts meeting and going through. So I think it would be one of the sooner ones on that front. The benefit of it being an interim bill is that it signals to colleagues that this is something that's important, on that front, but we can continue to work on that. So I don't know. I always hesitate to predict anything with the legislature because it is.
So
Yeah.
I'm wondering if anyone else wants to step up to be backup. I'm assuming maybe Director McCombs or someone else might be willing to be backups or coordinate with us. Is that as I kind of nominate myself, if that's all right, unless there's a strong opposition to that. And I feel like I've been kind of from the beginning kind of trying to get this done, and I really like to see it get done. I had 2 successful bills that we brought from our county that got passed this year too, so kind of on a roll. So really excited. I really think this will be great. So
thank you, Madam Chair. So to that point, Alice, talk about from your perspective, sort of how I, in a director role of an agency that's going to be specifically, benefited by much of this programming, what's the traditional mechanism? I mean, having just how do I move in and out? Because I'll be called for testimony
Right.
as an expert
Yeah.
representing the agency. So how does this work as it relates to how I interface with this committee?
I think that it might like, I think that you as the director, like, I think there are going to be times where it's like, you are going to be presenting on behalf of the Forest Service. And, I think that in times where, if Jody, you can't make it, Director McCombs could mention me like, and it's supported by the Forest Health Council additive. But I do think that it would make sense for the committee to position themselves to be separate from the Forest Service and from DNR, because that's kind of the whole point of the committee is that, that you guys are experts from a broad range of interest and area groups that are impacted by wildfire and forest health issues. And so I don't want you to get muddled with like us and like the department stuff. And, if I'm being frank, y'all have a lot more maneuverability on supporting bills outside of the governor's budget than I do or Matt does. And so that's something that's a gift. And I might, and
Keeps on giving. All right.
yeah. And so sometimes like y'all will be able to be like more forward in your support than necessarily like, Matt or, DNR, where we kind of have to couch like, well, it's not in the governor's budget and we don't have a position, but obviously we can see the benefit. Like there's a way for you guys to be strong champions for these types of bills that have fiscal notes that we can't. So I would advise keeping it with the I don't know, Matt, if you're an ex officio member or like how that, whatever that works, but I think having someone from the outside is beneficial.
That's where my head was going towards as well. And I think it's just the power of the stakeholder voice as opposed to the agency voice. So I'm supportive of you, Commissioner, being our spokesperson for this committee, certainly. But I would recommend that someone else on this committee volunteer to be that voice as well.
Well, that's why I was hoping we'd have some backup or have like a team here. So I see Mr. Morgan has his hand raised.
Yes, I don't need more to do right now, but if it would help in any way, I would be happy to do that, or at whatever level I could. And just, I guess, now's the time, now's the crunch time. I would do whatever I could to help move this agenda forward because I believe that's a really good bill. And you guys sort out how that help could come.
I appreciate that, Mr. Morgan. I think that'd be great. Julie, you have your hand raised.
You're still on mute.
We can't
No.
hear you.
Can you type it in the chat?
I think the other thing to think too is to consider, like when folks are testifying too, is if there's representative, like if there's an expert from the committee, if we're talking about the internships, like for the timber program, things like that, like I can see, Mr. Morgan, that you would be, great representative. Like if we're talking about broad scale funding for, counties to engage on some of these works, like having that county perspective too. So I don't know. Like, I think it's good to have a point person, that you can work through in that process, but you can just do that. And, Pat, like there's the opportunity for being remote if you want, like that. The legislators, that doesn't diminish, not being in person doesn't diminish the testimony on that front. Like so I don't know, embrace the flexibility that we have.
So I think it'd be great let me make the suggestion and see how everyone feels about this. How about if I be the point person with Mr. Morgan being kind of like my immediate backup and kind of my backup, since I agree with Director McCombs. I wondered about, he's this very great source of expertise. And so I think that, I know there's that kind of that area where you say you can't piece, because the agency piece. So I think that it would be great to have all these other people are stepping up to help. So we can, it seems like Pat and Julie and Christy, we can put you on as backup. And let's say there's really things going on, then we can coordinate kind of information or statements, because usually we probably would prepare a reading statement or have some things ready to answer any questions they have. Usually, sometimes they ask questions, sometimes they don't. But I think that's kind of why we have Daphne and Alice and Courtney there for backup. So, and I see Samantha too. So how about we put all four of you on and have Mr. Morgan, have me be point. I'll work closely with Mr. Morgan, because I agree sometimes his expertise is well needed. And then the rest of you will all have on standby, and then we can all work as a committee and kind of stay in touch as we know when this is coming up, and have conversations on kind of what the status is. And I figure, well, even if we're just meeting briefly, just to kind of give a update, I think that would be great. Does anyone have any concerns about that? Great. Well, anybody want to kind of just make a motion to that?
I would, but I don't count.
I'm happy to make a motion, Jody.
Thank you, Samantha. Anybody want to second that?
I'd second the
Great.
motion, draft myself.
Great. I look forward to working along with you, Mr. Morgan. This is going to be a lot of fun. And I think you and I have 100% attendance for these meetings. So it's kind of fun to be working with you. So anyway, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Great. Well, thank you all. And we've got that off on our agenda. So we're now down to our,
I think one thing I might want to flag too, as obviously like working in a body, but y'all represent individual issue areas and things like that. And so if there are times where like the committee is supportive and maybe you and your other background in your other life, like have concerns or things like that, that's something to think through on that front. I think the Water Congress is a great example of, a broad advisory stakeholder representative group with a lot of members with varying and different issues. And so there are often times where like a member of Water Congress will testify, not maybe in opposition, but, in a monitor, like trying to amend or things like that. And so just that procedure of if folks are not fully on board, but if the council votes forward and they still want to testify, that's fine. You just need to just make it separate, saying like, hi, I'm here on behalf of my agency. Like, this is not the views of the council, like, on that front. Not that I expect to be much, rancor in the ranks, but it is just something to think through if needed on that front, on just, how do we work within the scope of the commission. If you're just making like it clear that you need to represent that you are speaking from a different voice on that front.
I appreciate you bringing that up, because I know that is a discussion we had this week at a county commissioner conference statewide, that there's some folks that might have varying views, but if you're going to be, serving on a committee as a chair or vice chair or something, that you needed to kind of support the motion or the discussion coming out. And then if you wanted to wear your hat, you couldn't just really refer to yourself on the other committee. So I'm glad that you kind of updated that. That's really important. Does anyone have any questions on that?
As my very Irish grandmother would say, we'll burn that bridge when we get to it. So
yeah. That's awesome. So the next thing I wanted to just kind of bring up before we talk about future topics, a couple of things. I think as we get in here and we get more information, I think maybe I know we all have the holidays, but maybe having, I don't know if we should meet right before session or right after session starts and kind of take a break, since we probably all have busy schedules for the holidays and it's hard to meet we have quorum. And so, but then we kind of get back into our every 2 weeks, because these bills and stuff will be moving quickly. But I don't know how you feel about that, all feel about that, because we'll need to kind of have some discussions. And I'm curious, Alice, with you here, and Daphne will be along, when we have things move or change and we need to have some input. I wonder how that will work if we find out there's some amendments, and then and we kind of talk about it or have that discussion here, and we make a recommendation, then it has to go to the full council, but we may not meet with the full council, but once, in a while. I don't know how that's gonna, if we have to move quickly to support changes, how do we think that's gonna look?
I mean, I think it's a real logistical challenge, based on that setup. And so I think that potentially increasing the frequency of the ledge meeting to once a week during session is maybe going to be useful. I think going through the benefit of, having, simultaneously, like, you have your rules and procedure about supporting bills. I think Daphne and Angela and Courtney and, like Matt's team will also still be reaching out to you, filtering information via email, and like, when session moves, like, it'll be text messages, it'll be email chains on just like the gut checks of like, is this moving forward? And so, I think, to your point, like, I don't think the committee needs to testify on every bill that has the word forest in it. Like, that's not necessarily going to be the best use of everyone's time. It just might not even be logistically possible. The interim bills, I think, to your point, like, we know they're coming, we know what they are. And so we'll be able to like plan on that front, but I will take a look. I've got a massive spreadsheet that I share with a lot of my ledge colleagues on bills that are coming down the pike that I can try to flag early for you guys on that front. But I don't know. I think potentially meeting more than once a week. And then the Forest Health Council, the big group meets once a month, right? No,
More like once a quarter.
yeah, I don't.
So that's my question. If there's like a major kind of amendment, I'm not saying that, but I'm just trying to put that out there, just kind of preparing for whatever, because we know things can kind of change. If there's a big change and the Forest Health Council, we make recommendations, but the Forest Health Council as a whole has to approve these. Is it that the whole Forest Council just approve in general that we want to see this bill get passed because of these priorities, and is that supporting us kind of helping with these amendments, as long as it stays within that scope of what was the general intention of the bill, and that we can kind of, as a committee, have that discussion as a subcommittee? Or do we need to have that discussion at Forest Health Council, but we may not have that meeting until February? So I'm just putting that out there because I'm just trying to anticipate. I'd much rather have that kind of discussed now than trying to, like, reaction wise, like, oh, we need to vote on this, and how can we pull a meeting together? So I'm not trying to borrow trouble here, but I just wanted to kind of think about that.
No, I mean, I think you're very right to anticipate this. I think I kind of like your approach of just like, when we're contextualizing the discussion around the bill and just being like, all right, the Forest Health Council wants to see things like along the lines of X, Y, and Z moving forward, and the Legislative Council is given approval to move the bill in that direction, whether that's like making amendments and trusting the judgment of the committee. I think that makes sense. But Mr. Morgan, Mike.
Yeah, Mr. Morgan, you have your hand raised.
Just a suggestion. In timber industry associations, we run into the same problem, and most of the time, not all the time, we can poll the members. Executive secretary, just most of these issues, they're not real controversial. So you call the members, make a round of phone calls, call the members, and many of the times it's unanimous, and then you can go ahead and present it as a unanimous group. It's a little bit cumbersome, but it allows you to do that without having a full meeting.
The only thing I'm worried about, Yeah, I agree with that I think that's a good suggestion. I just wonder with us having open meeting records, I know there's been some controversy with some other elected bodies that when they kind of do those rolling phone calls like that, it's considered kind of a open sunshine law meetings record because you're having kind of a meeting through one-on-ones and polling. So I don't know, it would have to be careful how, if we could do that, if it would just be DNR calling and asking one of the staff, or because I know we would, and so we'd have to coordinate that. But I think that's a suggestion, but I want to be very cautious that we be careful that, because I know certain elected body up here in my region kind of pushed those limits, and it the courts came back kind of saying, yeah, that's violation of sunshine law. So I just want to be careful about that.
Could we make it a written message and just let people respond to it that way? And that would be open to the public. Then that message would be public.
I think I'm not sure. I think we need to kind of maybe get some.
We need a lawyer. And
Yeah,
they
I was going to say, we need to talk to the lawyer about that, how we can do that. So maybe that'd be a topic for our next, already have an agenda item for our next meeting. How does that look and how does that work? So.
Yeah, I can reach out to the AG representative who supports the council and just get her recommendation for how bodies like this can like move quickly and agilely through the legislative process.
Thank you, Courtney. I think that's a great idea. So everyone thumbs up with that? Make sure we kind of clarify that before we make a plan. But I think it's a great suggestion, Mr. Morgan. I know with sometimes some of our associations, because we're all different commissioners from different bodies, we can have a conversation because we're not all in the same elected body. But since we're all in the same elected kind of appointed body and an entity, we have to be very cautious about that. So I think it'd be great to have that conversation our next meeting. So with that, are we good with not, of course, we probably don't want to meet in 2 weeks. That's kind of the holiday break. So it's just kind of helping us with planning. Let's see, that would be the 6th, January 6th. Would everyone be okay with that meeting on the 6th, just before session, or you want to wait till session happens and then meet?
I'm fine with the 6th.
I think that's good.
Cool. Great. Well, we've got that out of the way. Thank you. You guys are just make this too easy. Thank you very much. So, so that's the agenda item, is that having an update on that. Is there any other future topics, or should we just kind of stay focused on having kind of updates on this legislation, where it's at, how it looks, and kind of keep these brief until we I kind of feel, and I don't know how you all feel, that maybe our focus in these meetings should just be kind of focusing on getting this bill through and being prepared for that and kind of working together. And since if we're going to move up the cadence to every week possibly, and they might be shorter meetings just to discuss certain things, maybe we need to kind of put a parking lot of future topics for maybe after this session gets rolling in this bill, and kind of make our focus on kind of getting this bill kind of accomplished, and not having not that I don't want to have other conversations, but maybe we need to focus our efforts on the next few meetings on getting this accomplished and supporting it. What's everyone's thoughts on that? I see kind of, maybe. Yeah, okay. Mr. Morgan.
I think that's a great idea. These things always tend to change and morph, and they get adjusted and corrected when they get into the legislature, and staying vigilant about this, I think would be a good use of our time.
Great. Director McCombs, I saw you kind of doing it.
No, yeah, body language is never easy on video cameras. So no, I think it's a good way to frame things up. I think the group will be better served by sort of a high touch approach this first iteration. And I'll do my absolute best to stay an active and consistent participant. That's where I was kind of like, but at the same time, hopefully we're adding some additional capacity at the agency that would potentially be able to pinch it. So I think it's a good proposal and good approach.
Cool. So, and I just want to clarify, because I know that proxies to the Forest Council as a whole cannot vote, but we said this legislative committee proxies could vote. And I'm trying to remember what was that. Do we need to clarify that as well?
Yeah, I think I'll clarify that and send the information out. I don't have the answer off the top of my head.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that there were certain positions that could send a proxy that had voting authority.
Yeah.
I can't remember what that was.
Yeah, let's just clarify that, because I think one of those might have been Director McCombs, that you could send someone to vote for you by proxy, I think. But I just want to kind of, I think it's always good to clarify, because we're still kind of building and flying this plane as we've been forming. But I have to say, I'm really proud of all of us as a team and all the things we've gotten accomplished. And here we're going to maybe get this, our first big item on our list checked off. So, and with that, I just, unless there's further discussion on that, I want to kind of keep us moving, because I know we all have, I actually am going to take a half day off and do Christmas shopping today. So I'm looking forward to actually catching up, and actually have to buy groceries. So there's nothing in my fridge. So I need to go buy groceries. So anyway,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Mr. Morgan.
One other comment, and that
Yes.
is this, and all these kinds of efforts that we're starting on, in the long run, you always need a lot of community involvement, and you need a lot of community buy-off. And I think it's real important that we work on the agenda that we have. We need some tune-up game wins. We need some things that we can take to the community and the educational groups and stuff and say, we actually listened to you, we envisioned this, and we brought it through to fruition. And when we have that, then we will have additional support for the system and what we do. And so I think some wins here are real important to us.
Great. And I think that's a great suggestion. And with that, maybe, I don't know, I hate to ask Courtney or anyone staff to kind of do more work, but maybe if we had a 2-sentence thing for all of us to be able to quickly, in case we do get contacted, that maybe an approved 2-sentence thing to say what this bill, kind of that elevator kind of pitch. So just in case we're out and about, and maybe we can give it to all the members just in case we are out and about, and just so it's something we all agree on and approve that, and that DNR approves, that just something we can share quickly to explain what this is, what we're trying to do.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And I think I'd be happy to draft something and maybe run it by this group first, and then we can share it with the council.
Great, we'll add that to the next meeting agenda. I think our agenda's full. And then the last thing that I want to just talk about, and then I'm going to let you all go and have a wonderful holiday season, however you choose to celebrate with your friends and families and loved ones, is that we have a lot of folks have been very interested in this committee. We have, I guess we have to, I don't know how that, we've all been very busy and we've been meeting a lot of times, but we have to have sometimes quorum to be able to vote on things. And especially if we're going to be meeting every week, we'll need quorum to be able to meet and vote. And so we have a very large group, but I know that some folks haven't been coming consistently. And so that makes if we have a large group and a lot of them aren't coming, that makes our quorum harder to meet. If that makes sense. And so I wanted to have that conversation, and and of course I want everyone to come. I'm not saying no one can come, but if we need to make sure we have that quorum so we can vote on things and move quickly, do we need to have it? And this is just a suggestion brought to me, and it's hard conversation, but do we need to kind of shorten the official list so we can make sure, because a lot of you have been coming extremely consistently. And we want to, if we have a smaller list of actually who's on the active committee, then our quorum would be maybe easier to accomplish. Like today, that's why we do that roll call. So, I know it's a difficult conversation, but I just think it's something we have to talk about. So Pat, I'll let you go first. Your hand's up.
Thank you for that. I think it's a reasonable conversation to have, and especially, with everybody's time, right? If we commit to a meeting and we don't have a quorum, one of the things I'm wondering if it's worth offering people the opportunity to stay on the committee as what do you call that? Like a advisory member or something like that. Like you're welcome to attend, but you're not part of the the regular list that we count for a quorum. And I think about our tribal representative as an example. They are so busy, he's probably in Washington, D.C. today or something. And so to give him an opportunity to participate, and other members as well when their work schedule allows for it, but not count them toward a quorum, I think would be a reasonable option.
I think all these voices that have wanted to come are very important voices, and I don't want to lose their perspectives. And I'm really Council Member White Skunk. He's a very valuable member, and we really need his voice on the council and in this committee. So I don't want to make it sound like we don't welcome everybody. I want everyone to come. I'm just concerned if we have to make some choices coming up in this next legislative session that we have the right number for quorum. So I'm open to any suggestions that you have. If we want to just say people with this amount of attendance are considered to be the voting members going forward, or do we want to, I don't know. It seems like there's several of us have been consistent. So then if we make that list shorter, we could have that quorum. And not that they wouldn't be able to have input and speak however they want. It's just and they can definitely, it's just kind of needing that quorum to be able to vote. So very difficult conversation because I don't like to limit participation ever. I just want to make sure that we can make vote on things if we have to move fast this next session. So I'm open for more discussion or any motion anyone wants to make.
I think that's a tough subject, but maybe if you make a communication officially to all members and say, this is an issue for us, and maybe they will deal with it themselves and become more inclusive, or say that I'm really not helping things here and I will step aside. That would be my first approach, would be to make it voluntary and present it to people and say, this is a problem for us. And I really appreciate you taking on, that's a hard subject. So.
Yeah, it's not one I wanted to take, but I think I think it'd be great to reach out to maybe our committee. Maybe Courtney and I can kind of craft an email and just saying we welcome everyone, and we have to really make sure we meet quorum. And so, self-select but speak. I don't know how we'll do that. So, I mean, I don't want it to make everyone. I want everyone to feel like we want them here. We need their voice. And we need their participation on this committee so we can make these ideas stronger and better. Because I think this is what I'm always so proud of, is that we all have been come together with full consensus on all these things, and we all have very diverse perspectives. And I think that's kind of the strength and just the beauty. And I'm just so proud of the work that we've done, because we've all had these really safe places to speak our truths and our perspectives. And we've all been very open to listening to everybody. And I think we've had this really great conversation to come together. And I want to have more of those voices, but I also worry about meeting that quorum. So I think that's a great suggestion. We can reach out by email, or maybe we can have staff call. I don't know. I don't know how that looks. I'm looking for Courtney and Alice, or Director McCombs, how we think we can approach this very delicate subject, because I don't want anyone to feel, and I don't know, I'm just worried about, we have had a couple of meetings where we were worried about quorum. So.
Yeah, I really liked, I think it was, Pat's idea for people to maybe transition into more of like an advisory role as opposed to like the voting member role, and also Mark's suggestion to make it voluntary at first. So perhaps, we can draft some sort of email first explaining, the new year is coming, legislative session is coming, we might be meeting more frequently. Does anyone want to transition into a more advisory role? And we could ask everyone maybe to like recommit to being on the committee in 2023 as like, oh, we're doing this because we want everyone to recommit their time. And if you don't think you have the time, perhaps consider transitioning. I'm not sure, but I'm just trying to pull together what I'm hearing other people say, which has been a lot of really good ideas from everybody.
Yeah, I really appreciate everyone's ideas, because this was hard because I didn't want to have this conversation, but I think we have to kind of prepare for being able to vote this coming session and being able to move fast. I do like the recommit idea. Yeah. And I think I think, Julie, you're right. We need to explain why we need to have the quorum. And so would it be okay with everyone if I work on a communication with Courtney and staff and try to send that out to everyone and just get that out before our next meeting? Because we won't meet again to kind of approve the language. So can I get a motion for me to kind of work on that letter, just that we all approve? We want to kind of take because I want to make sure everyone understands this is a group decision. I appreciate you all kind of supporting me as I approach this very difficult subject. So, because I want everyone to be a part of this.
I would so move that. I'll put my name on that so they can kick me. It'd be fine.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Christy. Any further discussion or concerns?
I have just a clarifying question, Jody.
Yeah.
What is the best practice if folks aren't able to make that and we know that we might not have quorum? I mean, I know emailing the group has been super helpful for me to see,
Yep.
but then would we then try and reschedule, or what would be your preference knowing that we're getting into a really busy season?
Well, that's an important thing. I think if we know right up at front, I think that's a great question, because if we have a lot of folks that can't come, and they could email right away and let us know, because sometimes people don't know till the last minute. And I really don't want to counsel anybody on the last minute, because I'm trying to be respectful of everyone's time, right? Because we all commit to this. But I think we find out a lot of folks are not going to be here, then we might need to reschedule. If we find out there's a lot of folks that can't meet, but if we try to, I think this time works. I mean, I've kind of committed to kind of keeping this spot open. I've kind of given up my hiking days for that. So I try to hike a little later, but so I feel like that's why I try to keep these meetings brief and concise and keep us rolling so we can honor that. And so, if we're going to meet every week, we might not need to make the full 45 minutes. We might just need to be prepared, read the material, be prepared to be boom, 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 and let's get it done. But we do just want to make sure we're communicating. I think that's a great point. So if I say we hear from like 5 members, I can't make it this Friday, then we'll have to say, well, okay, here's a doodle poll quick. We've got to, or something, we've got to pick a different time because we have to have we have to meet. So does that sound reasonable? I know a lot of you have been great about emailing, but some folks I don't hear from. So, but most of you have been very, you're here. So it's great. So does that sound okay?
Sounds fine.
Great. So there's a motion still on the table in a second. Any further discussion? And thanks for that question, Samantha. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Awesome. Thank you all. We've been a little over, but I think it was an important conversation, and that's why I left it for the end. And I appreciate everyone and just your commitment to this. And I really think we're going to do some great things together. And I appreciate the opportunity to serve alongside all of you. And I wish you all the best and have a wonderful holiday seasons.
Thanks, Jody.
Same to
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks.
See you January 6th.
See you
Take care, everyone.